on the Isle of Capri that I found her, beneath the shade of an oak.
I remember being maybe 6 or 7 and sitting around and with music, and my father playing guitar. He played mandolin, guitar, played string instruments, and a whole group of us would be sitting around singing. My mother's favorite song was the Isle of Capri.
How does that go?
It was on the Isle of Capri that I met her, beneath the shade of an old oaken tree. And I can't remember the rest of the words. That is as we sat on the Isle of Capri. Just twice. I told her I loved her. I don't remember. That was my mother's favorite song, and I used to sing it for her.
Yeah.
Because I used to be able to sing when I was young.
So that's about, you were about 5 or 6 at that time?
7 or 8 maybe
Yeah.
then.
Where were you living?
In Corona, Long Island. We lived in a great big apartment house. A great big apartment. It was just two family place, but we lived in a great big apartment because we were a lot of children.
So that was probably what, the early 30s, mid-early 30s?
Well, I was born in 26. Yeah, we were very early 30s. Yeah.
Earlys, yeah.
Yeah, and we slept 3 in a bed.
Yeah, and how many sisters?
11. I had 11 sisters.
And you're where?
And I was 4th from the youngest.
4th from the youngest.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all your sisters, but we won't have to.
Well,
do that
we had
today.
a lot of fun, actually. My sister Julia was kind of a clown, but she always, for years and years and years, she always kind of kept the family in touch, where we had to remember, I mean, in case you forgot one of the other birthdays, or the parents' birthday, or Mother's Day, or Father's Day. She was the always kept us.
And where was she in the lineup?
She's 1, 2, 3, 4th from the oldest.
4th from the oldest.
Yeah, and she was very, very, very extremely thin, where most of us were kind of chubby growing up. My mother was kind of a little chubby.
Yeah.
And my father loved us all to be dressed nice, even though we didn't have a lot of money. We always were dressed nice and very clean. And he didn't like my mother to wear black. He hated that she wore black. I went to PS14, and I did not like the gym teacher. I did not like gym. I was never tomboyish. I'm really still not. Never. I never was tomboyish. I was always old girl. And I didn't like the gym teacher, and she was very mannish, and she was very outspoken. And she would, well, not me, but my best friend Lillian Housley was my best friend all the school years.
Even through high school?
I'm sorry?
Even through high school?
And through high school, Lillian Housley. Yeah, we were best friends. And you had to, when you went to gym, you lined up in the squads, and you had to hold your hair back, and you like this, so she could see if your bra strap was clean and if your neck was clean. And Lillian once got sent to wash her neck. And I don't think it was very dirty. Maybe she had a little perspiration or something. But anyway, we played volleyball. I liked that. I always did like volleyball. I always did like volleyball. And I guess I liked basketball too.
Yeah.
And I was good at basketball. But like now, I'm not into. If I was living in New York and the New York Giants were playing, I'd be very into it.
Yeah.
Or the Mets.
Yeah, well, you go to the pool and you golf and stuff, so you're
Yeah,
you're
I do.
active.
I move around a lot. I do play golf, and hopefully I'll be going back in a couple of weeks. Because of the heat, we haven't golfed, but and I haven't been in the pool for 8 weeks because I had the shingles. In the 30s, having fun to us was playing stickball in the street. But because we had a neighborhood where there were a lot of kids, and in the winter it was finding the top of a wash tub, which was like porcelain, and sliding down the hill, the snowy hills,
Like a
they're
sled,
little hills,
yeah.
on the porcelain like that was a sled.
Yeah.
And yeah, we played Ring-a-Lario in the street, but my father did not like us to play boy games.
Uh-huh.
But when he wasn't around, we did. When we
Yeah.
saw him come down the street, my father was one of the first in the neighborhood to have a car. It was middle class,
Yeah.
and we were the first in the neighborhood to get a real refrigerator,
Oh, wow. One that plugged in the wall?
a plugged in the wall
Wow.
refrigerator. But before that, we were the only ones in the neighborhood that had an ice box that you could put 100-pound square of ice in it. So the Iceman came around, and I don't think he liked it because we lived on the second floor.
Oh, gosh.
And then all the kids in the summer, all the kids would climb on the ice truck while he was delivering ice and getting the shavings of ice and lick them,
Yeah, now, how long did that 100-pound block of ice...
I really don't remember, but I'll say a week.
Oh, did it last that long?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
really can't remember.
Yeah, what do you remember about, like, when, like, being a teenager and being, like, in grammar
I don't know
school?
how often he came, maybe twice
Yeah.
a week.
What do you remember about being a teenager?
About being a teenager,
Yeah.
being a good student.
Uh-huh. You were good at school?
I liked school. I was good in school. I had got a scholarship to college. It was only a $500 scholarship, but in those days, in 1944, when I graduated, $500 was a lot of money.
Right.
But I couldn't avail myself of the scholarship because I had to go to work because my family needed the money.
Right, right.
And so, but in high school, we went to school dances. My sister Dolores and we had to go together and come home together.
Did you have any boyfriends
No
in high
boy.
school?
I had a boyfriend. He'd walk me home from school. He was Italian.
What was his
if
name?
if my girlfriend Lillian sometimes joined us, well, he didn't like that, and so that was my first encounter with having an Italian boyfriend who wanted to control me, and so he didn't last very long. My father was very controlling of our family,
Yeah.
which he had to be
Yeah.
because we were a lot of girls.
Yeah.
But from then on, I never would be with a man who wanted to control me. Never.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to have two husbands who did not do that. So we went to school dances on Friday nights, but before we went to school dances, we had to come home from school and clean a room, and my room to clean was the kitchen. I mean, like the weekly cleaning. So between getting home from school at 3:30 and going to school dance at 7 o'clock, I had to make sure and get under the refrigerator, make sure it was clean, and in the corners, because my father liked a really clean house. And when he came home, he looked in the corners and made sure everything, that it was clean. There was nothing, So we had to do that in order to be allowed to go to the school dance. But we did. And I don't know, but I think the dances were like 7 to 10 or something like that.
So
and we walked to school.
Did they have real live music? Did they have bands?
Yeah, we had a school band
Oh, and they
in
played
high
at the-
school. I sang with the school band for a short time. I think for one semester I sang with the school band in the days of Jimmy Dorsey and Tommy Dorsey.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked Helen O'Connell because she sang with Jimmy Dorsey and Bob Eberly. They were his two. And so I used to like the songs that they did, like Green Eyes. And, I can't remember the other song.
Well, green eyes, your eyes that promise sweet nights.
So let's talk about your sisters. Let's start with the oldest one, who was what?
Tessie, she was very kind, and she worked from when she was young, like probably 14 or 15. She worked for a press clipping bureau in New York City, and what they did was they had a crew, many gals and guys, and they went through the daily newspapers from all over the world every morning, and they were called, some of them were called the readers, and they looked through every item, and then they marked it if it was like a story about Frank Sinatra or Harry James or a celebrity, and then they marked it. Then that paper went to the cutters, and they clipped those, and those celebrities paid for them. That's how the company made money.
Uh-huh.
They paid for them, so it was called the Press Clipping Bureau. And so Tessie worked there. I worked one summer between my junior and senior year of high school. And Tessie was very kind. On payday, she'd always bring a treat home for all the little kids in the family, you know, like donuts or something.
Mm-hmm.
And Josie was next, and she was a designer for Butterick Pattern Company, which is very well known among seamstresses. Josie was very snobby. She was kind of a cold type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kitty was kind of impaired. Her eyesight was impaired, and her mind was a little bit off, but she was very kind. And I don't know how far into school she went, but she had a baby when she was not married, so she was put out of the house, and she went to live elsewhere, and we kids, younger, would always go see her, make sure she was okay.
Mm-hmm. Now,
And
she's
then
not
she
one
had
that-
the baby, and who is now my niece Patty. And Kitty went to live in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is upstate. And then she became part of the family. She married a man, and Paul, he was good to her. And so Patty, and then eventually she had 2 other children. And then there was Jeanette, who was kind of, but very kind-hearted. But
Yeah.
she moved. I don't know what Jeanette did for a living, truthfully. I don't remember where she worked. But she married very nicely. She married George Ford, and he worked for American Airlines. And then they eventually moved to California.
Okay. So we left off at Jeanette.
Okay, so are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jeanette had a daughter, Luann, who lives up in Maine right now. Very lovely young woman. Luann hasn't had any children, but she keeps in close touch with the family on Long Island and also with me. And then Julia came along. Julia was the family character. She was always kidding around, kept my father happy because she was always teasing him, and learned to smoke with him and drink wine. And she kept the family. She was the one in the family who made sure that we remembered to send birthday cards and Mother's Day cards, and in case we were neglect in that way. Julia married Arthur Fuller, and they had one son, Michael, who lives on Long Island. And Julia has passed away about 8 years ago. She worked for the Boulevard Watch Company in Astoria, Queens. And she used to tell us ghost stories and when we were in bed and scare us. But she was a fun person. And then there was Agnes. Agnes was kind of a sickly person. She had pneumonia 7 times, did not finish school because she was sick a lot. And she, when she did work, she worked in New York City in a factory type place. They did a lot of sewing and piecework, what was called piecework at the time. You got paid for as many as pieces of clothing that you completed. And she worked with my mother, actually. They both went into New York City every day to work. And Agnes had a son, Richard, and Lois, and they live on Long Island. and they both have children of their own, and of course they're all grown up now, and a few of them are married. And and then there was Mildred, who hated high school, but she was like she was like my little nemesis. She would try to get me in trouble all the time, and I was a goody two shoes. I never did anything wrong. I was afraid to do anything wrong.
Mildred was the wild one, wasn't she?
We had a curfew, of course, and during the week, if we went out at night, we had to be in by 10 o'clock. On Saturday nights, we had to be in by 11, because my father's theory was that bad things happen at midnight. Mm. And so, of course, most of us, wherever we went by bus and train. But Mildred was with Ben, who was in the tie. When she met him, he worked in a tie and tool factory, and Ben had a little money behind him. So he was the first one that I can remember that had a really nice car, and so a convertible actually. And she would often try to get me in trouble, like me and my husband. John at the time. If we went out with them together, we'd have to leave early because she said John was drinking too much. She was just a little bit. But we got along all in all. And all the girls, by the way, used to borrow each other's clothes if you allowed them to. And Mildred would never allow you, even though we were the same size, she'd never allow me to borrow anything of hers. And one time Agnes did, and she had to pay hell for it from Mildred. We all were basically the same size, and we were all a little bit chunky. My mother was a little bit chunky, and so we were the same until we grew up. And Mildred played hooky. Mildred played hooky from high school 17 times in 1 year. And one time she was walking home. I don't really even know where she had gone the school day, but a neighbor picked her up, and it was raining out, and she was walking along what was then the Southern State Highway, when you could walk along that area. I guess you can't do that now, but excuse me. From high school. She didn't care. And Mildred would come home late. As I said, we had a curfew, and Mildred would come home late, and she didn't care if she got scolded, because she'd say, well, I don't care, I had a good time, it was worth it. That was her attitude. Then we came to me, I was afraid of everything. I walked a mile to commune, to go to church, to go to confession every Saturday when I was 9 years old. At that time, of course, you could walk by yourself at 9 years old, not like it is today. But what did I have to confess? That I answered my mother back or something? I didn't do anything wrong. And I did love school. Actually, I was chosen most pleasing personality when I graduated from high school. But I loved school. I belonged to the chorus. And I took commercial art. I never did anything with it, but I took commercial art because I went to a vocational school. And I went to Friday night dances. I think I said earlier, Dolores and I went to dances together, and we had to come home together. And there couldn't be any boys, walking us home or anything like that. But I did love high school. And I ran for office a couple of times, was secretary of the organization. I graduated, and I won a scholarship to college, but I couldn't take advantage of it because I had to go to work. And I went to work at MetLife on 23rd Street in Madison Avenue. And on my way to work, I'd stop for breakfast. I'd get off the bus. I had one bus, and I'd stop and have breakfast at a little restaurant. And then I continued on, took the subway. But when I stopped for breakfast, I met John Haas, and eventually we started dating, and we married 2 years later. And I can boastfully say I have 3 wonderful sons, and Amy, who's more than wonderful most of the time when she's not being the mother and I being the child, but she takes good care of me. And I could say a little about my children because I know more about my children than my sisters.
Okay, we'll get to them, but let's go down to sisters.
Okay, so then there was Dolores, and Dolores and I went to the same high school. She was a year behind me. She was a good student. She graduated. By the way, I was the first one in my family to graduate from high school. All the others left before their time. And then Dolores and I were close because we went to school together. We had to walk through a big park to get to our school because we were not within distance to take the bus. So we walked about probably a mile to school every morning and back. But it was nice walking through the park. In the winter it was kind of cold. And Dolores was very into sports, very athletic, and she liked to dance. And then Dolores met Tom right after high school. Dolores went to work for the post office, and she retired many years later from the post office. And then there was Chicky. She had a baby out of wedlock and had to put him out for adoption. But she also had 3 very lovely young children, Jerry and Donnie and Bruce. And today Bruce is a doctor, and the kids are, and so I'll talk about the kids later. And then there was Dolores and Chicky, and Ann. Ann was the very youngest, and I don't know how old I was, but I remember the day my mother went to the hospital to have Ann, and I probably was 4 or 5 years old, to think back. But Ann, during Ann's school years, my parents moved from Long Island, New York to Babylon. I mean, they lived in North Babylon. They moved, and Ann met George Cutie, and they got married and lived in North Babylon also, and had 4 children. And eventually they moved to Miami, and that's where Ann passed away about 3 years ago.
Okay, so now let's talk about the kids. We'll start with John.
Start with 2?
John, the oldest.
Of my children? Yeah. Okay, John was born June of 1950, and he was a very hard delivery, John. And like probably at about 18 hours in labor. John grew up to be a very fine young man. He was a Boy Scout. He was a Cub Scout, then he was a Boy Scout. He was an English student, and graduated from high school in 1968. And during his school years, though, he worked at McDonald's not every day, I think five days a week. I'd take him up to work at McDonald's at the time when hamburgers were 15 cents. And I'm not sure what John, everybody thought John should be a basketball player because he was tall. But he was a good boy. He was a very, very good boy, always very well behaved and very caring. And Raymond was born in 1954 in January. Uh, Unlike John, Raymond was a little roughy, very, very beautiful. Beautiful, born with beautiful blonde curly hair. But Raymond would tell you the way it was. He didn't hold much back, but hardworking and insanely responsible to this day, where he's very responsible. Um, Actually, both of those boys are. Um, Raymond went to work for an electronic company, Hazeltine, after school. He went to college for 2 years. The company he worked for, he went to college at night for 2 years to better himself for the company. And he worked for them for 19 years, and then they began letting people go by, there's a word. Well, anyway, they let people by.
Laying them off?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because they were cutting back on their staff. But they did very well by him because he was a very good worker. And it did not take him. Raymond was the kind that I would say, go to unemployment, go get unemployment. And he would say, no, I'll find another job. The unemployment could be for somebody who doesn't want to or can't work. And so I think within 2 weeks, Raymond had another good job and is still at the same place, and he manages his company. And it's also in electronics. And through high school, Raymond was devilish, though, I have to say. I remember the time that I got a phone call. I worked for the school system, and I got a phone call telling me that Raymond pulled a fire alarm with another boy and let 3,000 students out. And they were passing by the little alarm bell, and they decided to tap the little glass. And of course, all the kids thought it was a fire drill, and teachers and everybody all left school. And Raymond was in his senior year, and they threatened him that he was going to be expelled, but of course I fought that. And but that was just one of the devilish things that Raymond did. Anyway, I was going back to that, but Raymond was kind of a devil. But he grew up to be a very fine young man. He's a very, very fine young man. And then we have Gary, blue-eyed Gary, smiley Gary, with the blooming personality. Gary graduated from high school, went to Stony Brook University, studied music. For a short time went to Juilliard School of Music in New York City. And he's a guitarist. And
Bass guitarist.
what kind?
Bass.
A bass
But
guitarist.
he plays lots of instruments.
There's a big difference between a bass guitarist and...
He plays guitar also, but that's, I think, his main thing is bass.
And Gary lives on Broadway in New York City, and he has lots of stories to tell because he's, over the years, has met many celebrities. And Gary has a son, Chris, who lives out in Reno, Nevada. Gary comes down to visit me. Lately, he's been spending a little more time coming down because he's getting jobs down here. But Gary was a good student. He paid attention at school, and he got caught playing hooky once. Met his father on the mall when he was supposed to be in school. But anyway, he went to Stony Brook College, and he's very busy now with his music. And then we have Amy, the princess of them all. When I was expecting Amy, the boys were on their bikes going around the neighborhood telling everybody to think pink. That was my slogan, think pink. And the day I had Amy, they were on their bikes going around the neighborhood. My mother had a girl, because everybody wanted me to have a girl because I had the 3 boys. And Amy has been a joy in my life. Yes, Amy, you were a joy in my life. Amy was always a good little girl. She was very devoted, always devoted to me. When she was little, she sang in school plays, and I was the school secretary at the school that Amy attended, so I kept a good eye on her, and she was with me a lot because we came and went to work together. And so I knew everything that was going on with her. And she was always a very conscious of her family, very touchy with her family, her brothers. And she grew up to be a very caring, kind young lady. She cares about people. And went to Brevard County School of the Arts for 2 years, and then went into her music professionally. And today she is a professional singer, works very hard, works on her own. She works for herself and works on her own and gets many jobs. And I'm happy to say she wrote a book about 2 years ago, a mystery novel, and the book is being published, and right now, today, it's what she's working on. But going back, she was giving piano lessons, and she went to a studio and met Tom. And she used to come home every night and say, gee, I wish Tom didn't have a girlfriend because he's really a nice guy. Well, guess what? She came home one night and said, I said, where were you last night? You were late. And she said, oh, I was with Tom. I said, I thought Tom had a girlfriend. Well, they broke up. Now she was happy about that. So anyhow, she worked in the studio that Tom owned, and she taught piano, and came home one night, and I had a house full of company, and she was like thrilled to death. She had an engagement ring on, and of course everybody was happy for her. And my husband Richard and I came to love Tom, and do still today. And so they got married on March 11th. Well, going back a year, Amy bought a house on March 11th, got married on March 11th, and then closed on the house on March 11th, which was her dad's birthday. And they had a beautiful wedding and celebrated it at the Hilton in Melbourne, Florida. And so today Amy is into music, and as I started to say, she wrote a book, and the book is going to be published. So she's hardworking at that. Tom is giving lessons and working for himself also in music. He also is working very hard. They are two very devoted to their music and very devoted to me. And they live 10 minutes away from me and are here at my beck and call. So we all love each other in this family, and we'd do anything, I think, for each other. And that's my story. And here I am, and I today am having a cookie swap. And I'm having 16 women bring cookies. So it should be a lot of fun.
Tell us what it was like during World War II.
Oh, well, we had blackouts at night sometimes where everybody had to be in, all the lights, no lights on. I forget what they were called. Do you remember what they were called?
Probably air raids, right?
We had air raid tests, but some nights we had you couldn't have any lights on. And we worried about my brother-in-laws who were in service, Howard, Richard, his brother, Ben, Mildred's husband. I lost a cousin, Raymond Procopio, in the war. Raymond lived in Staten Island. And everybody was extremely, the streets, everybody was out in the streets when the day, August 5th, I believe, that the war ended. And that was a very joyous time for everybody.
They said that you guys are the greatest generation. I guess it really pulled together during that
I
time.
think that's true. I think people were different. I think people are a lot, well, in my growing up, the neighbors were different than the neighbors I have. They were closer, like, people would invite people and have little get-togethers, and I don't find that here in Florida. In New York, we did a lot of that, but I don't find it here in Florida. But growing up, yeah. What else did I not say? Well, on Sundays, I think I did say this. On Sundays, we went to church as little kids, little girls, and Mildred, we would get, I think, a nickel to put in the basket. And Mildred never did. She bought candy on her way home from church with her nickel. But me, goody two-shoes, I always made sure that,
Okay, since we're talking about that,
Then-
let's get the dirt on everybody.
Then in the afternoon, Sunday afternoons, we line up. And now I'm talking about probably from Mildred, me, Chicky, and Ann, and Dolores also. We'd line up and we'd get a nickel to share between two of us. So at the time, you could buy a lot of penny candy. So you got 2 cents each, and then with the other penny, you bought something that was like 2 for a penny, like Mary Jane's, little Mary Jane's, and then you split them. So we had 2.5 cents each on Sunday afternoons to spend. And we would dress very, very well for church. We were always dressed well, clean. And then when we came home from church, and we had our big meal at 1:00, and we had to take off our pretty dress, and we could go around in our slip, our little petticoats, or put something like a during the week kind of dress on. And so we wouldn't get spaghetti sauce probably on, because Sunday was spaghetti day. And then we could get dressed again with a nice dress and then go to the store and buy our candy. Store was like about a block and a half, so we could walk there. But, yeah, I liked when I did not know my mother's mother very well. She died when I was really young. But my mother's father was a big, tall man and very kind of big, not fat, but big. He was a big man, and he had a white mustache and white hair. But he was so kind to us, and like he would bring a pack of gum and share it. We'd each get a slice of gum, and that was a big deal to us. Imagine that a pack of gum was probably a nickel. Now I buy a pack of gum for like $1.50. Same pack of gum. But, so we liked when he came because he was nice. My father's parents, my grandmother was very yappy, little Italian lady, very yappy, and I don't think she liked my mother, but I think that Italian people never like the person their child is married to. I think that probably was a common thing. I don't know, but they resented that my mother wasn't real Italian, like she didn't speak Italian. She only knew a few words. I think they would have liked her to be more Italian. My mother wasn't. She had blue eyes and pretty. But so we were never happy when they came to visit, because usually when they left, my mother probably had said some little thing that was not quite right, and then my father would let her know, you should have said that, blah, 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 But anyway, my aunts and uncles used to come on Sundays from Brooklyn, and my mother had one sister, Jenny. She never had children, and Aunt Millie we loved. She was like Betty Boop. She looked like her. She had wave hair like her. She was short. She was a little bit chunky, but she was so fun. And her husband, Uncle Charlie, he could sing. So he and I used to often sing duets, just, for fun. and he was a fun person too. They were nice. And then my mother had a brother, one brother. There are not a lot of guys in our family. My mother had one brother, and my father was the only boy in his family. But my mother's brother, Uncle Nick, he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. We liked when he came. They all were in the trash pickup business, like my relatives in Staten Island, which was, I guess, a very good money making because they all had big, beautiful homes. And my Uncle Nick was also in the trash pickup, and he had money, I guess. They had two kids, Josephine and Andrew, the one son. And unfortunately, we lost. They lived in the city or in Brooklyn and Staten Island, so we didn't see them a lot. Julia and Jeanette kept kind of close touch with the relatives, the cousins, and years ago they used to have cousins parties. Usually they were in Staten Island, and John and I would go. They were nice. Everybody pitched in a little money, and they had all kinds of food. So they did that once a year, and that was nice. So I think that the fact that John does that, John is my John, young John. He's family oriented, so he does that, and I really like that he does that because I get to see all the kids then. But there's a lot of kids I don't even know. It's kids of my nieces and nephews that I don't know.
Right.
Today I talked to Maureen and a nice conversation with her. During the war, I remember when President Kennedy was killed. I remember that day, November 22nd. Amy was still in the bassinet. She was just a baby. She was born in July of '63, and he was killed at 6. And I remember that day, how sad it was. And then his brother, I remember Bobby, was at the Hotel Roosevelt, I believe it was, New York City, and they were kind of campaigning, and he got shot in the hallway coming down the stairs. And I remember being in my living room and saying, the day of his funeral, and saying, what is this world coming to? And little did I know how much more worse things would happen. For instance, like we got this president that we have today, and I don't mind it being on film. I think that's the worst thing that could have happened to this country.
So tell us how you really feel. So,
I remember Frank Sinatra. I remember, I don't know, I was a kid in elementary school, I believe, when Frank Sinatra became 17 years old, skinny. They was called him the Skinny Kid. Mm-hmm. And I always, his first song was I'll Never Smile Again. I think that was his first song that he ever made, I'll Never Smile Again. And I remember this opening, what a skinny kid he was, from Hoboken, New Jersey. Yeah, I got married in Hoboken, New Jersey, the first marriage, legally, because John, my husband, was divorced, and we weren't allowed to get married in the Catholic Church. So we went, Julia and my brother-in-law Tom stood up for us, and we went to New Jersey on a Saturday morning, got married, and then because I was independent, on Sunday we had a dinner, sit-down chicken dinner in a restaurant that I paid. John and I paid for the dinner. My parents didn't have to pay anything, because that's what I wanted for a wedding reception. So. But we did go to a church. We did go to a non-Catholic church and had a little service first before we had the reception. I remember when the day John was born, I was in agony all day, from early in the morning till early the next morning before he was born. And Raymond, Gary was quick. Amy was a cesarean, so that was... what else do I remember about going on in the world? I kind of remember when President Roosevelt, I believe, introduced the minimum wage. Because I believe I was working, because when I started working in 1944, I was making $17 a week and going home with 14. And my mother got 12 and I got 2. And that $1 of that $2 went for car fare, for a bus and then a train. And doesn't seem to me it was too long, and we could probably ask Alexa, and she would know. Are you there, Alexa? Alexa, when did the minimum wage go into effect?
Here's something I found on reference.com.
I was working a few months, and all of a sudden my pay went from $17 to $28 a week. Now I felt rich, because I still had to give my mother $12, and so I had whatever was left. And now I could go buy a skirt or a blouse or something to wear to work. I was wearing my high school clothes to work, which was skirts and blouses, but not updated, you know. So I remember that when that went into effect, and of course I remember the day the Second World War started. It was a terrible day. I was a freshman in high school, 1941. I think that's the year my niece Luann was. I think Luann was born in 1941. Yeah, December 7th. That was Eleanor's birthday, December 7th. Yeah.
So what are you doing now to keep yourself busy? What's your day like? What is your days and weeks like?
Gardening, cleaning the house. Today I did all this furniture out here with lemon oil, and gardening, and I make all the tickets for all the events that we have here at the park, and I read some. I like to go poking around the shops. I watch TV. And I have a lot of acquaintances in the park. My 2 best friends are gone. Eileen to New Hampshire, back home with the children, and Barbara to California to be with her 2 sons. So they were my best friends down here. So what was I saying? I'm doing a ladies' luncheon in November, and it's going to be called Apple Time, because I loved the fall. When I lived in New York, it was the autumn leaves and the apples. And so Amy's going to be my entertainment, and we're going to have a basket of apples on each table, like eight apples in a basket. And Tom already made some posters paintings for me. One is going to be a door prize because it's so perfect for me. And I'm going to have a couple of them hanging around. And I'll have a little apple. When I make the tickets, I'll put a little painting of an apple, picture of an apple on the tickets. And we're going to have warm roast pork sandwiches, and a salad, maybe a coleslaw, and apple dump cake, which is yellow cake with apple filling. For dessert, everything will be apples. And Amy's going to sing some songs, and they'll get all this for $6 or $7 at the clubhouse. So that's my next really big thing that I'm doing, and it will take a little bit work, but I enjoy that. What else do? I have a butterfly garden that I tend to pretty much every other day, and I play golf when the weather allows it. And I go in the pool when the weather is warm. Right now the pool is closed because right now, today is March 29th, I think.
27th, I believe.
27th, March 27th, 2020. And we're going through a bad phase in this country of a disease. And so the pool is closed and I can't go there. Everything in the office, the clubhouse, everything is closed down. So I can't do that. So I've been reading a lot, getting into corners of the house clean, and just working in my garden and just staying by myself.
Is there anything you want to talk about? In particular? Or?
No, I just am so happy with my children. I think I told them that once. When I pass away, I want them to all stay close together as they are now. Everybody keep in touch with everybody, and they do that now, and that's what I want. Looking out for each other.
So, you're going to be how old this?
I'm going to be 94 in June.
94. So, what we probably all want to know is, how do you keep so vibrant and lively, and what's your philosophy on life? Give us some advice.
I think that maybe I'm giving some credit to myself, but I think that sharing with other people, which I enjoy doing, giving of myself to other people makes me happy. So it's kind of a selfish thing on my part, because I feel good when I do something. Like sometimes I lay in bed in the morning watching the news and having coffee, and I think, what could I do today for somebody? And I usually wind up getting up and making muffins and sharing them with my neighbor, and that makes me happy. I just don't want to sit and do nothing. I think that's such a waste of time, and I enjoy people. You know, I don't see a lot of people, especially now. I see somebody going by, but I enjoy people, and I think I'm pretty well accepted in the park. Everybody knows me. I've been here for 40 years, and I care about other people, and I think that the Lord sees that in me, and keeping me here to make chicken soup for my sick neighbor. That's what I think. You know, I don't sit very well. I don't sit quietly for a very long time. I'd rather be moving. I feel sorry because, number one, it's not good for my circulation. I do have a little problem with my hand, that's poor circulation, but I lose the feeling in it sometimes. But and I'm vain enough to want to keep my weight down, so I look decent. So that helps me moving around. And I'm not very particular in what I eat, but I'm kind of careful. I don't eat a lot of sweets, and I hardly ever drink anything alcoholic anymore. I don't know, I just enjoy life, I guess.
Yeah.
Was on the